Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my recordings. And I'm doing this recording in response to a suggestion from a subscriber of the channel who posted up on the community tab an idea for me to consider potentially creating a video about. And it's a little different for me, I think. I don't know that I've done something like this before, but it was definitely a fun little project to work on. And what I'm going to attempt to do in this video is spend some time talking about the Heralds of Galactus. And when I originally sat down to wrap my mind around this project, I did not anticipate just how big this project could potentially be. And as I dug into the details, I was like, ooh, this is a daunting task. There are a lot of people that have been Heralds of Galactus, and I did not fully appreciate that until I sat down to do this project. So it was really cool for me. It was fun because it was challenging and it was also a little bit different. Now, part of the reason why this was cool is because everybody believes that Galactus is going to make an appearance at some point in the MCU. And a lot of people are assuming that he is going to make an appearance, but they're also assuming that the Silver Surfer will come along with him. And here's the thing is I don't know. I don't know for a fact if that is going to be true. And I say that because there are so many other Heralds of Galactus that could potentially be tapped to be in a movie depending upon the time period in which Galactus chooses to make his appearance in the MCU. Right? Again, I assumed that there was like a handful of Heralds. There's a lot more than what I knew about. And then as I began to dig into them, there was a lot of detail around each one of them, which again is really cool. So the thing is, I don't want to assume that if Galactus appears in the MCU, that it will automatically be the Silver Surfer that appears. Or maybe I should better say, I don't want to assume that it's only going to be the Silver Surfer, because after all, Silver Surfer has actually appeared in several movies before, right? So it could be really interesting. And so this was just a cool project for several reasons. And what I intend to do over the course of this is to spend some time talking about these various heralds at different levels, right? Because some of them are more interesting than others, but I'll be spending a little bit of time talking about them, how they're kind of sort of connected, giving you some of their first appearances of, when they popped up and stuff like that, in the event that you want to dig a little bit deeper into some of these characters. And what I will say is that if this proves to be a video that is popular with people, then there is a good chance that I'll create additional videos. But for the purpose of this, I'm only going to touch on a handful of the Heralds just because there are so many of them. And so if this is something you like, if this is something you enjoy, you have to vote. You have to vote with your thumbs up. You have to vote with your comments, because that will be the sign that this is something that you guys want me to do more of. Now, with all of that said, let's dig into the Heralds of Galactus. And so everybody knows, I think by and large, that Galactus had his first appearance in the Fantastic Four number 49. I think everybody knows that. It's a really, really cool issue that's part of a really important story arc. But what I will say is that, as I've alluded to already, there have been a lot of Heralds, but some of these Heralds have actually served Galactus for long periods of time, long stretches of time. Others have only been used for an issue or two. In one case, if memory serves, there was one Herald that basically served for a single frame. He was literally in a single frame of a comic. Others have actually served in what-if stories, alternative timelines. Some are retcon creations, and I'll get into that in a little bit, what a retcon is and which character I'm talking about. Others have actually been part of crossover events between Marvel and DC, and I don't know if people know that. But again, if you guys are voting for this thing and you're like, hey, this is pretty cool, can you tell me more? Then that might be something that we dig into. Now, with all of that said, I'm going to touch on the first couple of Heralds. And what's kind of sort of cool about this is that the first couple of true Heralds of Galactus are actually based upon 4 universal elements. the four universal elements of water, air, fire, and earth. And again, I'm not sure that people have actually thought about that, which is really cool. It's really cool. So the first person, the first character that we're going to talk about is the Silver Surfer. And the Silver Surfer is widely recognized as the first Heralds of Galactus, having first appeared in Fantastic Four number 48. And this particular issue was entitled The Coming of Galactus. And I will explain. In a little while why I say that the Silver Surfer is widely recognized as the first Herald. And I don't say that he was the first Herald, so stay tuned for that. In this story arc in which the Silver Surfer and Galactus appeared, it was basically Fantastic Four 48, 49, 50. And this was written by Stan Lee. It was illustrated by Jack King Kirby, and it was inked by Jumpin' Joe Sinnott. This is one of my favorite story arcs as it relates to the FF. One of my favorite story arcs. And as you've probably already surmised, the Silver Surfer represents the element of water, right? Surfboard is a dead giveaway for that one. So he's essentially the water element. And I think many of you are already familiar with this story arc and what happens here. But essentially, the Silver Surfer is sent to Earth, and he is basically evaluating the Earth to be consumed by Galactus. And over the course of these issues, he basically finds himself at odds with Galactus and actually rebels against him. And so, confined to Earth, Galactus basically finds himself without a herald. And we are not introduced to his new heralds until issue number 120 of the FF, published in 1972. And the date is important, right? The second Herald of Galactus appeared in Fantastic Four number 120, published in 1972. And it was in this issue that we were introduced to a character known as the Air Walker. Not Michael Jordan. The Air Walker, also known as Gabriel. And Gabriel squared off against the Fantastic Four and proved to be a pretty solid foe to them, right? Pretty solid foe until issue number 121 of the FF, where he was basically destroyed by the Silver Surfer, right? Silver Surfer came back to Earth and was like, hey, I got to put a stop to this. And he basically destroyed Gabriel. And I use the word destroyed purposefully because it was revealed that Gabriel, aka the Air Walker, was actually a robot and not a humanoid as he basically appeared. He was a robot that was created by Galactus. Now that's interesting. It's interesting because it isn't until 1981. It wasn't until issue number 306 of Thor in 1981 that we actually learned the origin of Gabriel, because we all thought he was a robot, right? So Gabriel was actually a member of the Nova Corps. He was a commander in the Nova Corps that was abducted, recruited, and befriended by Galactus. He was basically abducted from his spaceship, and he was basically imbued with the power cosmic and became the Air Walker. And he served Galactus faithfully and willingly until he was killed by enemies of Galactus that were preventing Galactus from consuming their planet. So Gabriel, his buddy, his boy, they've become friends and they've been together for a period of time, working together, doing what it is that they do, which is to eat planets, identify and eat planets, right? He is killed. And Galactus is basically distraught and decides, you know what? I am going to honor my friend by taking his essence, his life spark, and transferring it into a robot that basically looks, acts, and behaves just like the Air Walker. So Galactus extracts this spark and puts it into a robot. And the robot basically goes on to do what it is that the Airwalker was doing before, until he was destroyed by the Silver Surfer in Fantastic Four number 121. Now, in this same issue of Thor 306 in 1981, we actually learn a lot about the third Herald of Galactus. And the third Herald of Galactus is Firelord, who clearly represents the element of fire. And now what's interesting, he was serving on the same ship, in the Nova Corps, on the same ship as Commander Gabriel. He was actually the first officer to Commander Gabriel in the Nova Corps. And so as a first officer to a person that he was loyal to, he basically spent his time hunting down Galactus. He hunted him down, and then he confronted him, and then he basically agreed to serve as Galactus's herald in exchange for Galactus telling him what happened to Gabriel. Now here's the thing, Galactus could have told him what happened to Gabriel because he knew, Galactus knew, but Galactus needed a herald. He needed a herald to do his bidding to find planets for him to consume. So he basically took this deal even though he already knew what had happened to Galactus. And I think there was some mind wiping and some other things that have happened. But basically, first officer of Gabriel basically is imbued with the power cosmic and becomes Firelord. And his first appearance, again, in Thor 306, we learned the backstory, but we actually saw him first appear in Thor 225, published in 1974. So again, there's this huge gap between when these characters are being introduced and when we actually get backstories, additional detail for them. So Firelord first appeared in Thor 225 in 1974, but it wasn't until 81 that we got the backstory. But in this issue of Thor 225, we actually see Firelord square off against Thor and Hercules. And he holds his own, right? This was back in the day when Thor was still slamming his cane on the ground to become Thor. He was still a human. He would slam his cane and then he would become Thor. And so, over the course of this issue, again, Firelord basically battled against Thor and Hercules and held his own up until the three of them actually teamed up with Galactus to actually battle a greater foe. And that foe was Ego, the living planet. And the four of them squared off against him in Thor number 227 and number 228. These are really cool because these are really cool story arcs that if you haven't read them, they're not bad reads. I'm not the biggest Thor fan, but it's actually not a bad read. But after defeating Ego in issue number 228 of Thor, Firelord requested his freedom from Galactus. He was like, hey, I was born a free man. I did my thing and I want to be a free man again. Will you free me from this servitude as your herald? And Galactus is like, I would love to, but I still need a herald to do my bidding. He's like, I still need somebody to do what it is that I need to have done. And so it was at this time that Thor stepped up. Thor stepped up and basically said, Galactus, use this. He presented to Galactus the destroyer armor, and Galactus basically imbued the armor with the power cosmic, basically transforming it into a mindless herald for a period of time. And so I don't really consider the Destroyer to be a true herald because he wasn't really alive like the other heralds that I've mentioned before, or the ones that I will mention in just a second. It was basically an armor where the power cosmic was poured into it and brought it to life, and then it served Galactus in that capacity again for a period of time. So for those that don't know the backstory behind the Destroyer armor, it was actually created by Odin. And it made its first appearance in Journey into Mystery, issue number 118. And this is a freaky story. If you haven't read this one, it was basically like Loki did some things to trick some hunter into finding the temple where the destroyer armor had been left. The destroyer armor merged with this very selfish hunter and went on a quest to basically destroy Thor. And Loki, realizing what he had done, tried to unring the bell, tried to wake Odin up, but Odin was in the Odin sleep. And it was just the destroyer armor is official. It is official. If you haven't read this story, it put Thor through its paces, and Thor was basically let off with a plot twist that he should have honestly been defeated by the destroyer armor. But plot twist stuff, it's comic books. He was let off the hook and that kind of stuff. But in my opinion, the destroyer armor really took it to Thor and truly did defeat him. But Journey into Mystery number 118 is the first appearance of the destroyer armor. The next Herald of Galactus is actually introduced to us by way of the Fantastic Four in issue number 211. It's amazing how many of the Heralds are actually in Fantastic Four issues. It's actually quite impressive. But the next Herald made his appearance in issue number 211. And so it was in an attempt to actually save the Earth from a threat known as the Sphinx that the FF actually enlisted the help of Galactus. They actually sought out Galactus and made a deal with him. And they made the deal with him so that he would actually help defend the Earth from a pending attack by the Sphinx. And in exchange for this, what Galactus basically said was, hey, I've identified a new herald. I need a new herald. I've identified a new herald. I need you to track this person down, capture them, and deliver them back to me. And once I do that, then I will defend Earth against the Sphinx, this bigger threat. This threat was so big that the FF basically made a deal kind of sort of with the devil, right? Which is a really interesting it was a really interesting story. And so the FF basically went out to find Tyros the Terrible. And that name probably does not mean anything to any of you. The same way like Airwalker probably didn't mean anything. Tyros the Terrible. But it'll all come full circle. All come full circle in just a moment. So the FF basically get transported to this planet, and they actually square off against Tyros, who is a warlord. And he puts up a pretty good fight, but they eventually subdue him, and then they deliver him to Galactus. Galactus imbues him with the power cosmic, basically transforming him into Terrax the Tamer. Terrax the Tamer is then armed with a cosmic axe, and he is essentially given mastery of Earth, the fourth element, right? He has mastery of the Earth. And I'm talking about little case Earth, not the planet Earth, but the ground. He has mastery of the ground. Again, now we have water, fire, air, and now Earth. All the first four heralds of Galactus. So all of this action with Tyros, aka Terrax the Tamer, all goes down in Fantastic Four number 211, which is, again, considered to be basically his first appearance. Now, I technically could wrap this video up now, right? Could technically wrap the video up right now because I've hit on the first true four heralds of Galactus. But as I alluded to at the beginning, there's a little bit of a twist. There's a little bit of a twist here, right? So there is another herald that is actually the first herald of Galactus. And this person is the first herald of Galactus because of a retcon. And so for those that don't really know what a retcon is, it is basically when a writer basically rewrites history. They rewrite history a little by introducing some new facts, some new data, and they kind of weave it into old stories and or events. So in this case, this retcon was actually done by the really talented Jim Starlin. And Jim Starlin is super talented. This guy was both a writer and an artist back in the day. And I think he had some kind of accident that prevents him from drawing these days, but I always felt that he was much better as a writer. But he basically created Thanos, for example, and he also basically set up what is the cosmic landscape for Marvel. Marvel had been doing a lot of things cosmic, but it wasn't until Jim Starlin came along that he kind of put the structure in place. He put the hierarchy in place. He created more of these characters that would exist out there. And like, for example, Adam Warlock was created by Stan Lee back in the day, and it was kind of a jump ball character for a while. A couple of people picked it up and did something with him, but it really wasn't, in my opinion, until Jim Starlin came along that he started to work with with Adam Warlock, that character actually became pretty interesting. But in the case of this new Herald, right? This Herald is known as the Fallen One. And we actually don't know a whole lot about this character at all. Not even his real name, right? Because they basically said his name was kind of sort of lost to time. But what we do know about the Fallen One is that he made his appearance in issue number 11 of Jim Starlin's run, his 2003 run on Thanos. It's in this issue that we actually see and hear for the first time about the Fallen One. And what we learn is that the Fallen One is essentially a herald, like many of the others, that rebelled against Galactus time and time again. He would pop up, he would not follow direction, he would rebel. Galactus would basically punish him and lock him away. And then the Fallen One would escape, and then he would come back after Galactus, and they would battle, and then he would be in prison again. And this happened time and time again. So long, so much time had passed in which he had been locked away that his name has essentially been forgotten. And it's one of those characters that at some point somebody will pick it up and run with that, which might be pretty cool to learn about the Fallen One. This character that supposedly existed through retcon, right, before the Silver Surfer. So at some point, maybe someone will dust this one off. But again, this character, the Fallen One, had his first appearance in Thanos. This is not the more recent Thanos. This is a 2003 version of the Thanos title. So with that, I am now going to wrap this video up. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this. Again, a little different from maybe some other stuff that I've done, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, I definitely want to encourage you to leave comments behind, hit the thumbs up button. Let me know what you think so we can mix it up in the comment section. And if you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects, or you can send me an email to Reggie@RegieCollects.com.